Hello everyone, my name is Stifter and welcome to my blog. If you're watching this by any chance on my YouTube channel, welcome. If you would like to leave some feedback, that would be appreciated. You can leave it in the comments on my blog or here on YouTube. And also if you have any questions, I'll try to provide answers. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, share this with your friends, spread the word, and of course, if you like to receive more of these kind of videos, please subscribe so you can get immediate feedback when I upload the videos and you can watch them immediately. Now that we got that usual stuff out of the way, let's talk about what I'm going to be covering in this tutorial and the different parts after this one. So I get asked a lot of questions, retouching type questions from photographers, retouchers, and I've also been asking you, the viewers, what kind of tutorials would you like me to create? Of course, some questions get asked more than others. So I like structure, so what I decided to do is basically create one long tutorial broken down into different parts. So in each part, I'll try to answer a specific area, specific type question, and also if you watch all of them together, you'll receive a workflow overview, and also you get from start to finish type tutorial where you can see me retouching all of these images. Now, number one question I get asked probably is, how do I get this look? Which is basically a code name for, okay, I have been browsing the internet, I have found some images that I really like, and then usually people send me an image and say, well, how do I get this look? And my answer is typical. I always do the same thing. I said, well, output is always going to be relative to the input. In other words, whatever your source image is, it will greatly affect how your output, the final image, will look. And unless I know what you're starting with, it's hard to give you specific directions how to get to this point. And I can understand why people do this, mainly because they see this great look, which is dramatic. This is from a Gucci campaign ad from 2010, I believe. You can probably Google it and get some bigger overview for yourself. But as you can see, all of these images are quite striking, and they have this really toned look where you have warm skin tones and these cold tones for the background. And of course, the models are striking, so it really works. It's a very popular look. People, probably of all the different looks that they found in different magazines and campaigns, this is the one that I get asked the most. So I decided to try to give you approximation of how you might take your images and turn them into something similar to this, or use the same principles of cold and warm tones in a similar setting. And that's why I have here a editorial, which is basically a male and female model lying on a beach, and of course we have similar setting, relatively similar setting. Warm tones against a dark, against a colder background, sea, ocean, and the sky. Now, I can't really copy paste the look because it wouldn't look as good, but I can certainly use the Gucci campaign for inspiration, which is probably what you will be doing. So let me show you something. I have here a bunch of images. Now, another question that people ask me is, how do I get that color correction, creative color correction like you would see here in these Gucci ads that we mentioned? So people want to know, how do you get these really nice colors? And that's another thing I want to cover. I also, like I said, I wanted to give you that, not just any colors, but also how do I find an image online and how do I match or try to use that as an inspiration to color correct my own images? A popular question. Another very popular question is, well, how do you match the colors once you get it in one image to other images in a series? How do you make them consistent? And of course, that's a good question. So I have here an editorial which is similar to the Gucci ad that will allow me to show you how do you get from one point to the next. It will show me, I will show you how to get that color correction, and also by using multiple images I can show you how to match different images in terms of tone and color, and that they will look the same after they were color processed. Now here I have more than one image, as you can see, and I decided to pick of all these images 3 different images. The reason why I picked 3 different images here is because, first let me show you which are those. So we're going to be working on these 3 images. Now the reason why I picked 3, well, the way I figured, if it's 1 image, it's not enough to show you how to color match different images, right? If it's 2 images, that's too little, because you can't show too much. It's just 2 images. If it's more than 3 images, then it's a too much repetitive process, and I'm just showing you what I already showed you. So I think that 3 is the magic number, and these are the 3 I chose from those areas. One is a model with a lot of background for us. There's more background empty space than it is model blocking the camera. Here we have a female and a male model, so it's kind of nice dynamic. And here we have more of a close-up image, so there's going to be more detail work. And I think those 3 images are perfect for displaying what I wanted to show you. And of course, if I go back here, like I said, the other thing is people ask me about a workflow. What kind of workflow would I use to get this? And I'm not just going to show you one workflow, I'm going to show you 3 different workflows using 3 different programs. But more on that a bit later. And also, people ask me, well, there's been so many beauty type retouching tutorials on YouTube and other places. I would like to see an editorial, and that's why I chose here an editorial. Now, I would like to show you a beauty retouching as well, and I probably will in the future, because it offers a bit of a different approach and different kind of retouching than what you would get from editorial. So I think that's important as well. But for now, I can understand if you've seen too many beauty type tutorials, so we'll focus on an editorial for once. Alright, so let's start off by showing you some of the things that you would need to follow along. Now, before I also continue, I have to say that unfortunately I couldn't get the permissions to share these images with you so you can work on them alongside with me, but it is something I'm working on for the future projects. So in the future, hopefully I'll obtain the permissions I need to give you the images so you can use them for educational purposes, of course, and work along with me. Alright, now let's take a look at an overview of the things we're going to be needing or things that we should consider before starting into actual retouching. So why work with raw files, or why request raw files as if you are a retoucher? It is 2014, but there are still some beginners and people who struggle with the idea of raw versus other type formats. So basically this diagram would give you a better understanding of it. All cameras shoot in RAW, but when you are delivered JPEG or TIFF, the camera does the processing for you. When you deliver the RAW file, you do the processing. That's the main difference. In other words, the camera, for example, if you want to shoot JPEG, it does all the white balance, contrast, saturation, sharpness, all that stuff for you, and delivers you a compressed file in 8-bit per channel mode. Now, if you want a lot of images and you want to process them quickly, that's not a bad idea. But for our type of work, it's not usually enough. We want more. With TIFF, it's pretty much the same story as with JPEG. The only difference is that after all the processing, you're delivered usually a compressed or not compressed file you can choose, and it could be also in 8 and 16 bits per channel. But it's pretty much the same deal as with JPEG. We lost all the data that the camera was able to capture, and the camera does the processing for us. When you're shooting with RAW and you're delivering the RAW files, things are different. Everything that the camera sensor is pretty much able to capture ends up in a nice little package called RAW, and then we are left as a user to do the RAW processing and conversion with full might of the tools, which are much better than the one in camera, plus we get to make the choices, not the camera, and that is the better choice. So if you are shooting with your camera, of course today most people also save their RAWs, but just in case you don't, this should be a compelling reason. And if you're a retoucher, you pretty much always want to request RAW files. The situations where I think you might find yourself working with JPEG and TIFFs are if you're working with stock photography for maybe compositing purposes or something like that, and also if you're doing some mundane type work like fixing blemishes or something like that, maybe you're assistant to a retoucher or something along those lines. But the work we're going to be doing, and just in general as a professional retoucher, you want to request the raw files. As a photographer, you want to send the raw files to your retoucher to get the most out of it. Or if you are a retoucher and the photographer, then of course it's the same story. You want the most out of your files, and that's done by raw. We prepare a good foundation, which we want it to be the best for our next step. Speaking of our next step, well, we also have to talk about different raw processors and different raw conversion software out there, and how we can take advantage of some of them better than others. So the most logical choice for many retouchers is the one that ships with Photoshop, and that's Bridge and Camera Raw as a plugin. With the new Photoshop CC, I think you have to download Bridge separately. It's a file browser, but it does have Camera Raw inside. It's up to date, it's easy to use. Many don't require anything else. If you're working with small number of files, especially as a retoucher, it's more than enough. However, there are some photographers out there who work with large number of files, and for them probably the better choice would be Lightroom, which allows you to work with multiple files, select them, and offers quite a bit of functionality. Now both of these programs are from Adobe, and as long as they come with the same version of each program, then they support also the same functionality. They have the same sliders, the same conversion engine, so the quality of the conversion is exactly the same. The difference is in other functionalities, as we'll see in the upcoming videos, and where one is better than the other and for what purpose. Now we also have a third option there are many options, but I chose another one, and that's Phase 1 Capture 1, which is popular among some professionals. Arguably it has the best raw conversion engine, but depends on how you use it. So we're going to cover that as well. It's popular also in some situations when they shoot tethered, connect their camera with laptop, for example, and shoot on location. You might find it in certain retouching studios. So all of these three are, I wanted to cover them for wider user base. And also, if you're one who uses Capture One, for example, and you see me use Lightroom in a different way, you might get inspired to use it as well. Or vice versa, if you see me use Lightroom, you might Capture One, you might decide to switch from Lightroom or use it as well. So whatever happens, if I inspire you to try something new, that's always a good thing. So why not, right? And also there are disadvantages and genuine disadvantages and disadvantages of each of these approaches. And let me show you what I mean by that. Okay, so once we're done with our raw conversion and processing, whether that's Capture One or whatever, we're gonna continue working in our main hub, and that's Photoshop. So for example, with Camera Raw, we convert and process our file, we send it to Photoshop. We do the same thing with Capture One, and of course we do exactly the same thing with Lightroom. All roads lead to Rome, as they say, right? So whatever we do, it's gonna end up in Photoshop for further processing, and that's why we're gonna create the best foundation for working in Photoshop. Now once we've done that, here comes the next step, and this is where things work a little bit differently. For example, with Camera Raw, we lose the privileges of working with layered files. We can still browse them and work on layered flattened TIFFs, for example, but not layered TIFFs. That's an important step. I'll show you later. With Capture One, just like with Camera Raw, it's pretty much a one-way street. You convert and process your raw file, take it into Photoshop, and that's it. It only works one way. Now that's a good and a bad thing, depending on how you want to work with files. And I find it a bit limiting because there is another option, and that's Lightroom, which can take the Photoshop from Lightroom to Photoshop, from Photoshop to Lightroom and back, and still keep the layers, as well as take advantage of the program for raw conversion, but this time we're working on TIFFs or PSDs. It's an amazing way to have an easier, more efficient process, especially when you're trying to match different files together, and I'll show you how that works in upcoming videos. We'll cover each of these in detail. So this is just an overview of what we're doing and what are we going to be covering. Okay, let's talk about hardware considerations, because it's not just enough that we talk about software. The hardware also will determine some the quality of your work. So the most important device for judging or evaluating your images is of course your monitor. So we want to make sure that we get the most out of our monitors. The main most important thing to look for in a monitor, I think, would be the type of panel. There's IPS panel, which allows you very good viewing angles, so you don't get distortion in your tone and color when you view it from the side to side, up and down, and so on and so forth. So as you can imagine, this is very important. So we want to be able to have freedom to move and not distorting colors. If you're on a budget or you don't know what to buy, maybe you have seen the TN panel, which has a horrible viewing angles, and if you look from left to right, up and down, your color shifts tremendously. Some laptops have this, a lot of them actually, and this is not bad for application type work or maybe even games or something like that, browsing the internet. But when you evaluating your images for photographic type work, for um, color critical type work, this should be unacceptable. So either try to buy a better monitor or try to at least be aware of it as a problem. Now also I have a video here on YouTube where I talk about the basic elements that I would consider buying a new monitor. So I'll link you that either in the description or here on the video itself as annotations. But you might want to check that out if you're trying to buy a new monitor, or at least get a sense of some of the elements you might be considering when using your monitors as the main viewing device. But I don't care what kind of a panel you have and what do you do, there's still other elements, and that is not only the use of proper profiles, but also profiling and calibrating your monitor. Doing this by eye is not a good idea because we just have a very subjective eye that adapts easily, and it's not very good for judging color. So that's why, on an objective level. Subjectively, that's a different story. But objectively speaking, we need a hardware device, hardware calibrator, that you attach to your monitor, and it measures the colors and it allows you to create a profile for your monitor, which will allow you to be consistent with other calibrated monitors, which is very important for color managed workflow. Now, I will be talking about this in great detail in a series I'm preparing, maybe done by the end of the year or beginning of the next one, practical color management for retouchers. But here I just wanted to briefly give you at least an idea of what, in this brief video, what I would consider. Now, if you're considering of buying or researching more about these devices, check out xrite.com, which is one company that's very popular, and the other that's kind of popular is also spider.datacolor.com. So check out those two websites and see what they have to offer. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is a common question that some people ask, or maybe you're in a dilemma, and that is, what should you use for retouching? Mouse or pen? Pen and tablet, that is. Well, first and foremost, I've seen people who use pen do everything with it fine. I've seen people who use mouse do everything fine. I use both, but it's partly a matter of personal preference. The only advantage of pen tool is that it allows you pressure sensitivity. And when you're doing painting type operations, maybe dodging and burning or something with the brush, this can be very useful for masking as well. But other times, I use mouse for anything but paint type operations personally. I use mouse for browsing internet, checking my email, application type work, moving sliders around. But as soon as I pick a brush in Photoshop, I also pick a pen tool in my desk. So that is what I do because it feels more natural. It allows me to take full advantage of pressure sensitivity, and especially doing maybe dodging and burning, it's easier on the hand. It feels more natural and allows me for more precision. But that's just me. There are a lot of people out there with different ideas. but one won't make you necessarily a better retoucher by default. It does require some skill. I've seen people who buy pen and tablet and then just try it for a week, don't like it or can't get used to it, put it in a desk drawer somewhere, and 2 years later it's still there collecting dust. So make sure that either you try it out first, or if you can try it out, at least make sure that you're buying it for the right reasons. Not because somebody tell you, but it makes more sense to you personally, and it's kind of like a preference thing, right? If you've done a lot of doodling or sketching or painting when you were a kid, then or you're doing it still, then my pen tool might just work perfectly for you. They're both capable, and you can do everything with one as you almost as you can do with another, minus the pressure sensitivity, of course. So ultimately, it's a lot to do with personal preference. And speaking of personal preference, so let's say you do choose to go with the pen. There are two main popular versions out there, both from Wacom, and one is Intuos Pen and Touch, formerly known, I believe, as Bamboo, and the other is Intuos Pro medium tablet, formerly known as Intuos. Now they're just called Intuos and Intuos Pro. One is more professional version, if you will, the other is not. Now the thing with Wacom tablets is that they're not the only one on the market, but they're probably the best. They're not super cheap, but they're very good quality, and you can do, I'm using the Pro version, and it's really nice. It really helps me with paint type operations. Throughout these tutorials, I would be using for dodging and burning mostly pen, and for mouse I'll use mouse for everything else. But it's ultimately up to you as a personal preference. I say that if you're serious about dodging and burning and painting and just retouching, that you do consider buying a tablet, but it's not necessarily something you have to have or you can't retouch, just so you know. But I have so got used to dodging and burning with pen that I don't think I can do it with mouse. However, I know people who do it with mouse only, and it works perfectly for them. Really nice results. So ultimately, it's a personal preference, but there are, of course, pressure sensitivity advantage with pen. And with this, I conclude this video. Stay tuned for the next videos, where we'll be discussing everything in more detail, starting from different raw conversions and processing. See you in the next one. Thank you for watching, and if you see any videos that you like on my channel, please give me a thumbs up, click the like button, share it if you like with your friends, spread the word, leave a comment, give me some feedback so I can make better videos. And if you like to receive more videos that I upload and get a up-to-date state on my channel and the tutorials I make, please click on the subscribe button. And here's a really interesting thing I would also recommend. You see this little icon here, this little wheel? If you click on it, there's an option called Send Me Updates, and you click just Save. That way you will get updates to your directly to your inbox in your email, not just on the channel update, and you will never miss a video. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.